Welcome to the Funeral Channel Network podcast. We are back with another deep dive, and today we are wading into some waters that, well, honestly, most of us try to avoid swimming in until we absolutely have to.
It's not exactly the kind of thing you bring up at a casual dinner party, is it?
Definitely not. But it is, inevitable. We're talking about the intersection of our extremely online lives and the very messy, very analog reality of loss. We've been reading through a fascinating stack of research centered around a core essay titled Transforming Digital Guest Books into Tangible Memorial Keepsakes.
Right.
And I know, you're listening to this and thinking, guest books, you mean the comments section on the funeral home website.
And that reaction, that slight dismissal, is actually the starting point of this whole investigation because we live online, we date online, we work online, we argue online. And for the last, 15 years or so, we've started mourning online?
It's the default now. It really is. Someone passes away, and within hours, there's a URL, there's a page, and the comments start rolling in. It happens almost on autopilot.
But there is a massive tension there, and that's what we need to unpack today. The research highlights this paradox. We have more data about our loved ones than ever before.
Oh, for sure. Photos, videos, texts, cloud archives.
An endless stream of it. But the source material makes a really provocative argument. When you are actually in the trenches of grief, the cloud feels empty.
Empty is a strong word for something that's technically full of infinite data.
Okay, maybe distant is better. It feels cold, it's behind glass, it feels like you're looking at a museum exhibit rather than experiencing a connection.
I see what you mean. It's an archive, not a hug.
That's a perfect way to put it. So the mission for this deep dive is to explore a very specific transition. We aren't just talking about printing things out.
No.
We're talking about taking those digital comments, those ephemeral condolences, the stories typed out by high school friends or distant cousins, and alchemizing them into something you can hold. Tangible, physical keepsakes.
Right. And I want to be clear right up top for everyone listening. This isn't a tech support episode.
Not at all.
We are just telling you how to hit print or convert a PDF. This is about the psychology of grief. It's about why, in 2026, when we have VR and AI and infinite storage, our brains still crave paper and ink when our hearts are broken.
It's that fundamental why.
It's the why that really hooked me here. Because logically, a digital database is superior, isn't it? I mean, it's searchable, it doesn't take up shelf space, you can't lose it in a house fire. Hopefully not.
On paper, it's better in every way.
But the source leads with this heavy concept. Grief is not experienced digitally alone.
That is the foundational pillar here. We have to start with the biology. Grief is not a theoretical exercise. It's not data processing. The essay explicitly states, grief is tactile, sensory, and often deeply physical.
Break that down for me. Sensory grief. What does that actually look like in practice? Because it sounds a little abstract.
It's not abstract at all, actually. Think about what happens when you lose someone close to you. What is the instinct? You don't just sit in a chair and access memories like files on a hard drive.
No.
You wear their sweater.
You hold their coffee mug.
Yeah.
I've even heard of people keeping a specific pillow because it smells like them.
That's it. You are looking for sensory input. You are looking for weight, texture, smell. You are looking for what psychologists call object permanence. You need proof that they existed in the material world, not just in the digital ether.
Right. And the disconnect is that digital messages, well, incredibly convenient for gathering support from all over the world.
Which they are. That part is amazing.
They completely fail at that present.
They require a barrier to entry. This is a key point in the research. To access the comfort, you have to find your phone. You have to unlock it. You have to remember the URL.
Or find the link in your email.
You have to navigate past a pop-up ad for flowers or deal with a software update. Every one of those little bit of friction.
God, that is so true. I was thinking about this while reading the notes. Imagine you're having one of those grief ambushes. It's 2 a.m. You can't sleep. You feel this just absolute sorrow.
We've all been there.
And you just want to read that nice thing your aunt wrote about your dad. But first, you have to reset a password.
It kills the connection instantly. It turns an emotional moment into an administrative task. And when you are grieving, your tolerance for frustration is essentially zero.
It breaks the flow. The spell is broken. You go from, I miss him, to, why won't this load?
That's a dangerous shift, a really dangerous shift. And the source brings up this concept of lifelines. In the days immediately following a funeral, families return to these messages repeatedly.
Over and over again.
They read them over and over. It's a way of self-soothing. It's a reminder that they aren't alone in their grief. If those messages are logged behind a screen, they feel temporary, they feel like they're out there in the ether.
They don't feel like they belong to you.
Exactly. But if they are in a book on the coffee table, they just are.
They become furniture.
In the best possible way.
Yeah.
They become part of the environment. There's a great scenario painted in the research, the difference between doom scrolling through condolences versus sitting with a book.
Oh, the doom scrolling is real. You're on your phone, the blue light is blasting your retinas, your cortisol is spiking, and you're just swiping, swiping, swiping. It feels frantic. It doesn't feel like remembering. It feels like consuming.
It creates anxiety. The source gets into the neuroscience of it. Blue light triggers alertness. It mimics daylight. It tells your brain, be awake, be alert.
Which is the opposite of what a grieving brain usually needs.
The absolute opposite. A grieving brain needs regulation and calm.
So contrast that with the book.
A book is static. It doesn't refresh. It doesn't ping you. It doesn't run out of battery.
Thank goodness.
It has weight. The source talks about the heft of a memorial book mirroring the weight of the loss. It grounds you. When you hold a physical object, you are engaging the somatosensory cortex in a way that touching a smooth glass screen just doesn't do. You feel its presence.
So if we accept that we need to move these things from the server to the shelf, we have to look at what we are actually moving. And this is where the source brings up a term that I think changes the whole conversation. They stop calling them comments.
Right. They introduced the term legacy material.
Legacy material. That sounds weighty. It sounds archival. It sounds like something that belongs in a library, not a server farm.
It reframes the value proposition entirely.
Right.
If you view these things as just comments, like the comments section on a YouTube video or a news article, then they seem disposable.
Oh, absolutely. We are conditioned to think of internet comments as the trash heap of society, right? Don't read the comments.
Rule number 1 of the internet, avoid the comments section at all costs.
Yes.
But funeral guest books are a rare exception. Social norms are still very strong there. People are, for the most part, on their best behavior. And when you look closely, these aren't just notes. They are expressions of relationships.
The source calls it a mosaic.
Yeah.
I love that imagery. It's so fitting.
It is beautiful. And it's accurate. Think about it. No single person holds the full picture of someone's life. Not the spouse, not the parent, not the child.
No way. The spouse knows the person who snores and forgets to take out the trash.
Right. But the coworker knows the person who mentored the interns and always had a stash of good chocolate in their desk.
And the college buddy knows the person who drove a beat-up Honda Civic across the country in 1995 with a terrible mixtape on repeat.
And the barista knows the person who always tipped $2 and asked about their day.
Each one is a little tile in the mosaic.
That's the key. Individually, these are fragments, but when you aggregate them, when you print them out and bind them together, you get a record of how the deceased was known and loved. It's a collective narrative.
Known and loved. That hits hard because you realize that the guest book is often the only place where all those versions of the person coexist.
It's the only place where the college buddy and the barista and the spouse are in the same room, so to speak. And the so what here is critical. When you treat this content as legacy material, it changes how you handle it.
How so?
You treat it with reverence. You aren't just hitting Control P and stapling some copy paper. You are curating a biography of impact.
But that word curating, that sounds daunting. I mean, if you're grieving, if you can barely get out of bed, do you really have the energy to sit down and curate a biography?
That's a very real concern.
The source addresses this directly in terms of timing, right?
It does, and I think this is the most compassionate part of the research. The source is very clear. There is no ideal timeline. And that should be a huge relief to anyone listening.
Massive relief.
Yeah.
Because there is this pressure, right? The funeral is over, the flowers are wilting, the casserole dishes have been returned. You feel like you need to wrap up the business of death.
We live in a society that wants grief to be efficient. It's a project to be completed. Okay, you took your 3 bereavement days, you did the funeral, move on. It's absurd.
It's totally absurd.
But the source outlines 2 different paths for this project, and both are completely valid.
Walk us through the immediate path first. Who is that for?
For some people, action is medicine. They feel out of control. Death is the ultimate loss of control. So, organizing a book, choosing a font, correcting typos, that gives them agency. It gives them something to do with their hands when their mind is just spinning.
It's productive grief. It's a way to say, I can't fix the fact that they're gone, but I can fix this margin.
Yes. It's a way to channel that nervous, helpless energy. But then there's the delayed path, and this brings us to the concept of the pause.
I love the pause. Tell me why this is recommended. Because my instinct would be to do it right away before the website disappears or something.
And that's a valid fear, which is why the first step is always to save the raw data. Copy it all into a document, email it to yourself, back it up.
Okay, so you secure the data first.
Secure the data. Then, the source actually suggests that for many people, maybe most people, it is better to just stop, leave it untouched for months, maybe even a year.
Why wait? Is it just about avoiding the pain?
It's not about avoidance, it's about cognitive capacity. We have this term, grief brain. It's a real neurological phenomenon. In the first few weeks and months, your prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for decision-making and executive function, is literally not working at full capacity.
They're in a fog.
You are in a fog. If you try to make editorial decisions then, you might make choices you regret.
Like what? What could go wrong?
You might delete something because it hurts too much to read today, not realizing that in 5 years, that painful message might be the one you cherish most. It might contain a detail you'd forgotten.
Or the opposite, right?
Or on the flip side, you might feel a frantic need to include absolutely everything, every single thinking of you, creating a 600-page encyclopedia that is too heavy to actually lift and too repetitive to read.
So the pause protects you from your own compromised decision-making.
It allows the grief to soften, as
Yeah.
the source puts it. When you come back to the project 6 months or a year later, the work becomes less about raw survival and more about reflective remembrance. You move from triage to archiving.
That makes so much sense. Okay, so let's say you've waited. You're ready. Now you have to decide what to include. This is the selection dilemma.
This is where it gets tricky.
The source lays out 3 approaches here, and I found this really helpful because I think I would get stuck on all or nothing.
Most people do. The first approach is completeness. You preserve every single entry. This values inclusivity above all else. You don't want to leave anyone out, even if they just wrote, "Sorry for your loss."
There's power in volume, right? Seeing that 300 people took the time to write something, anything.
Absolutely. It's a testament to reach. It shows the breadth of the community's response. But the downside is readability. Do you really want to read prayers sent 50 times in a row? It can become repetitive, and it can dilute the impact of the more personal stories.
Probably not. Which leads to the second option, curation.
Curation is about emotional resonance. This is where you become an editor. Maybe you cut the generic one-liners. Maybe you only keep the messages that tell a specific story, share unique memory, or include a photo.
So you're creating a highlight reel.
A highlight reel, exactly. This makes for a shorter, more readable book, something you might actually sit and read cover to cover like a memoir.
But I feel like there's guilt there. I can just hear it. Oh, I cut Aunt Brenda's message.
Mm-hmm.
Even if all she wrote was R.I.P.
The guilt is real, which is why the third option, the hybrid approach, is often the winner.
This was my favorite. It feels like the best of both worlds. It's so practical.
It is. You create one comprehensive archive book, maybe a standard print job from a copy shop, nothing fancy, that has everything, every last comment. Just for the record, it goes on the top shelf of the closet.
That's your master file.
Your master file. But then you create a best of collection, a smaller, beautiful book with just the funniest stories, the best photos, the most touching quotes. That's the one that lives on the coffee table.
I love that because it separates the archive from the experience. The big book is for history. The little book is for comfort.
That's the distinction. And the key takeaway the source drives home is that the decision should be guided by emotional sustainability.
What does that mean? Emotional sustainability.
It means the goal is comfort, not obligation. If the idea of editing 500 messages makes you want to crawl into a hole, then don't do it. Just print them all. Or wait. The project should reduce your burden, not add to it.
That's a great guiding principle. Speaking of editing, oh boy, this is where I feel like fights happen in families. The ethics of editing.
It's a minefield. It really is. Everyone has a different opinion on what is respectful.
So the source brings up this very controversial point. Do you fix the typos? You have a message from Uncle Bob. It's heartfelt. He's pouring his soul out, but he spelled condolences wrong, and he used no punctuation.
And he probably typed it in all caps because he doesn't know how to turn them off.
Yes, all C-cap-E-S. Do you fix it? My gut says yes. Make it look nice. Respect the dead by making the book perfect.
And that is a very common instinct. It comes from a place of love. The source advocates for what it calls light editing.
Define light. What's the boundary?
Light editing covers things like formatting issues, duplicated entries, when someone hits submit twice by accident.
Right. Get rid of the duplicate.
Obvious typos that distract from the meaning. The source suggests that fixing these things is acceptable because it removes the friction for the reader. It helps the message land more clearly.
Right. You don't want to be reading a tear-jerking story and get pulled out of the moment because you're stumbling over a misspelled word. It breaks the emotional immersion.
However, and this is a big however, the golden rule is never alter the sentiment. You are polishing the glass, not changing the picture inside the frame.
But I want to push back on this a little. Is there an argument for not fixing it? For leaving every single error in?
Yes, there is, and it's a powerful one. The argument for original voice.
Tell me about that.
Think about a specific type of person. Maybe the deceased had a friend who was, let's say, rough around the edges. A biker, a mechanic, someone who didn't spend their life writing emails. Their message is full of slang and maybe some questionable grammar. If you go in and fix his grammar, add semicolons, make it sound like an English professor wrote it, have you improved it? Or have you erased him? Have you erased the authenticity of his voice?
You've sanitized it.
You've gentrified the grief.
Wow. Gentrified the grief. That is a powerful phrase.
The source warns against that. The guest book should sound like the community that surrounded the deceased. If the community was messy and loud and couldn't spell, the book should reflect that. That messiness is actually authenticity. It's part of the story.
So how do you balance that? How do you have a readable book that isn't full of distracting errors but still keeps the soul?
I think the best approach is transparency. If you're going to edit, put a small, discreet note in the front of the book. Something like, messages have been lightly edited for clarity and formatting, but the unique voices of the authors remain their own.
Ah, so you just state your intention.
You state your intention. That sets expectations, and it absolves the family of feeling like they are tampering with the evidence. It's a smart compromise.
That does seem like a smart compromise. Okay, let's move from the text to the visual. We've talked about the words, but how these things look matters a huge amount.
Oh, massively.
The source uses a phrase I absolutely love: visual silence.
It's a beautiful concept, especially in the context of grief.
Because the internet is loud. It's visually noisy, ads, sidebars, pop-ups, breaking news banners.
Even the funeral home websites can be cluttered. Lots of links, different colors, different fonts. The source warns that when you move to print, you must avoid the temptation to decorate.
We have this impulse, don't we? To show we care, we want to add angels and doves and clouds and fancy scroll work on every page. We think we're making it special.
We think fancy means respectful, but often fancy just means cluttered. The source advocates for calm design.
What does calm design look like practically? Give me the building blocks.
It looks like a museum. Think about an art gallery. The walls are white. The lighting is simple. Why?
So you look at the art.
So you look at the art. If the walls were plaid with flashing lights, you wouldn't see the painting.
So in this case, the messages of the art.
The message is the art. The design is just the gallery wall. So practically, that means neutral color palettes, creams, soft grays, whites, and generous spacing. This is the one people get wrong most often: white space.
They try to cram as much as possible onto one page to save money on printing.
Right. Single-spaced, 10-point font, tiny margins. It looks like a legal contract. And when you are grieving, a dense wall of text is intimidating. It feels oppressive.
It induces anxiety just looking at it. I can feel my shoulders tensing up just imagining it.
Exactly. But if you have wide margins and maybe only 2 or 3 messages per page, it feels like poetry. It invites you in. The white space is where the emotion lives. It gives the reader permission to pause. It allows you to breathe between the stories.
Let's talk about the specific formats. We've mentioned books, but the source gets pretty granular about the different ways you can manifest these digital messages. It's not a one-size-fits-all thing.
No, not at all. The most obvious is the printed memorial book. This is the comprehensive archive we talked about. And the source makes a very specific point about the tactile nature of this. Thicker paper with a matte finish.
Matte finish. That's interesting. Why not glossy? My first thought would be glossy like a photo book.
Glossy feels like a magazine. It feels commercial. It reflects light, which can make it harder to read, especially for older eyes. Matte feels like a book. It feels like art paper. It absorbs the light. It feels, again, more substantial. It implies permanence.
That makes total sense. But not everyone wants a whole book. What about the other options?
The source highlights framed prints as a focal point. This is a beautiful idea. This is where you take maybe the 3 most powerful quotes about the person, or maybe a short poem someone shared in the comments, and you typeset them beautifully and frame them.
And you hang them on the wall?
You hang them on the wall next to the person's photo. It becomes part of the home. It seems like a really nice way to integrate the memory into daily life without it screaming memorial.
It just looks like art until you get close and read it. Then there's what the source calls portable comfort.
I love this one. Bookmarks and memorial cards.
Oh, that's a great idea. Something you can slip into your wallet or put inside the novel you're reading.
It's a talisman. It's private. You can touch it when you're on the bus or sitting at your desk at work. It's a secret little connection that's just for you.
And finally, integration. This is for the scrapbookers out there.
Yes. You print the pages out and insert them into existing memory boxes or albums. This is really lovely because it creates continuity. The online messages aren't the separate death thing. They are just the final chapter in the book of their life, placed right alongside the wedding photos and the baby pictures.
The source mentions that providers like the funeral program site are really specializing in this. Is there a reason to go with a specialist versus, say, the copy shop down the street?
I think so, yes. A general printer is treating this like a quarterly business report. They're focused on speed and cost. They don't know the emotional context. A specialized provider understands that this is a sacred object. They might catch things. A standard printer wouldn't like, hey, this photo is too low resolution. It's going to look pixelated next to this heartfelt poem. You might want to find a better one. That guidance is part of the service. You aren't just buying ink on paper. You're buying sensitivity and expertise.
That leads us perfectly into the emotional journey of this transfer. Because we're not just moving data, we're moving emotion. We touched on this with the immediate path, but let's go deeper. The source talks about digital to physical as an act of healing.
This is a profound section. The expert analysis in the material suggests that this process transforms passive reading into active remembrance.
Unpack that distinction for me. Passive versus active.
Passive reading is scrolling. It happens to you. You are consuming content. It's a one-way street. Active remembrance is creating. When you are selecting the paper, choosing the font, organizing the messages, you are exercising agency. You are a participant.
And agency is exactly what you lose when someone dies.
That's the crux of it. Death is the ultimate loss of control. You couldn't stop them from dying. You can't bring them back. You feel powerless. But you can build this book. You can organize these memories. It gives the bereaved a sense of purpose and structure in a time that feels utterly chaotic.
It functions almost like a ritual, doesn't it?
Yeah.
We have the funeral, we have the burial or cremation, and then the rituals stop.
They do. The drop-off is steep. People go home. The lasagna stops coming, and you're alone in the silence. This project can become a post-funeral ritual. It gives you a mission. I'm going to build the Book of Mom. That's a reason to get up in the morning.
But we have to be honest about the cost. The source doesn't sugarcoat this. It's hard work. It's not easy.
It is emotionally expensive work. Reading words of love can bring renewed sadness. It triggers that fresh grief all over again.
A grief ambush.
Yes. You're scanning through messages, feeling okay, and then you hit one that unlocks a specific memory of a camping trip from 1998, and you're on the floor. The source advises that it is acceptable, even necessary, to pause, step away, or ask a friend for help.
Ask a friend. That's a big one. People always say, let me know if there's anything I can do. And usually we say, no, I'm fine.
Because we don't know what to ask for. We feel like we're burdening them. But this is a concrete yes. You can say, actually, I can't read these right now, but I want them saved. Can you download them and put them in a document for me?
That is such a gift to the friend, too. It gives them a way to be useful when they feel helpless. It lets them into the circle.
And then when the book is done, distributing it becomes another act of community. Giving copies to siblings, parents, or best friends acknowledges that the grief isn't isolated. It's shared.
It's like a secondary service in a way.
Imagine giving this book to your siblings on the 1-year anniversary. That date is always so hard, people dread it. But if you have this book, have a focal point. Let's sit around, drink coffee, and read through the stories. It turns a day of dread into a day of connection.
Now, we need to look to the future, because one of the most compelling arguments the source makes is about future-proofing.
This is the time capsule aspect. We assume the internet is forever. It isn't.
Not even close. Broken links,
Nah.
lost passwords, platforms going out of business. Remember MySpace.
Exactly. Or even just interface changes that make old data hard to find. The source points out that printed materials are not just for the people grieving now, they are for the people who never met the deceased.
That gave me chills when I read it. The scenario of a grandchild, 20 years from now.
Let's play that out. Imagine a child born in 2030. Their grandfather died in 2026. They never met. They have photos, sure, but photos are static. They're silent.
You see what they look like, but not who they were. You see the smile, but You don't hear the laugh, you don't know the stories.
Exactly. But then this kid, when they're a teenager, picks up the legacy book, and they read a story from a guy named Steve who says, "Your grandpa once drove 3 hours in a snowstorm to help me fix my roof."
Suddenly, Grandpa isn't just a face in a photo. He's the guy who drives in snowstorms to help friends. He's a hero.
That character trait, loyalty, helpfulness, is transmitted through the story. That is how values are passed down. The source says this provides context and personality that transcends time in a way a JPG file simply cannot.
That is worth the effort. That right there is worth the tears and the typos and the formatting struggles.
It is, but, and there's always a but, we have to navigate the market. The source includes a pretty credible warning here about commercial caution.
Yes. The funeral industry is, well, it's a business. A very big business.
It is. And vulnerable people are the ideal customers. The source warns families to be wary of emotional sales tactics.
The upgrades, the guilt trip marketing, the things you're supposed to buy to prove your love.
Don't you want the gold leaf edges? Don't you love him enough for the premium Italian leather?
That manipulation is the worst. If you really loved him, you'd buy the expensive one.
It's a trap. The source emphasizes that memorial creation should never feel transactional. The value is in the content, not the container. A spiral-bound notebook from Kinko's filled with genuine love is worth infinitely more than a leather-bound book that's empty or that put you into debt.
So if you feel pressured, walk away.
Walk away. You can always do it later. You can do it yourself. Trusted resources frame this as a supportive option, not an obligation. They should be helping you solve a problem, not creating a new financial one.
And one final practical tip the source mentions, the accuracy check. Seems obvious, but...
Mundane but critical. Verify names and dates before you print 20 copies.
Oh, absolutely. Nothing worse than printing 20 books and realizing the birth year is wrong.
It happens because you are crying while you type, tears blur the vision, your brain is not working right. Get a second pair of eyes. Get a friend who is not as emotionally invested to proofread it. They will catch the date error that your brain is auto-correcting because you've typed it 1,000 times.
And keep the digital files. That's the redundancy. Don't throw them away once the book is printed.
Yes. Physical books can be lost in fires or floods. The digital file is the master negative. Keep it safe in the cloud. The book is for the coffee table. The cloud is for the backup. They work together.
Okay, we have covered a huge amount of ground here. We've gone from the neurobiology of touch to the ethics of editing typos. So let's bring it all together. What is the big picture here?
The big picture is that we are bridging a gap.
Yeah.
We are living in a transition period of human history where our souls are still analog, but our tools are digital.
Souls are analog, tools are digital. I like that. That sums it up perfectly.
This deep dive has been about reconciling that. We aren't saying the digital guest book is bad. It's amazing. It allows people from all over the world to sign it instantly. That's a miracle of modern technology. But it's incomplete.
It's the gathering mechanism, not the preservation mechanism.
Correct. The preservation mechanism needs to engage the senses. It needs to be something that takes up space in the real world, just like the person did.
So for you listening right now, whether you are in the middle of this process or you're just storing this info away for the future, remember that touch grounds emotion. It makes it real. And in a world that feels increasingly fleeting and virtual, making something real is a powerful act.
It's about ensuring that the memory endures, not just as data, but as a presence.
I want to leave you with one final thought to chew on. We spend so much time these days worrying about our digital footprint, right? Scrubbing our social media, managing our online brand. But perhaps we should be thinking more about our physical legacy. If the internet turned off tomorrow, if all the servers went dark, what tangible proof of the love shared in your community would remain on your shelf?
That is the question.
Thanks for diving deep with us today on the Funeral Channel Network podcast. We'll catch you next time.